Hey folks, welcome back to another video. Going to do an overdub on this video because unfortunately I'm having some mic issues, but I think the audio will be clear enough until I replace my equipment. So what this video is about is repairing these overflow tubes that are typically found in many of the carburetors that we see from the old vintage bikes. I ruled out that it was the drain screw, or ruled out it was any other problem in the carb. It was definitely the overflow tube, and I will show you how I figured that out. These particular carbs are from a 77 CB750 engine. I had two carburetors that were leaking occultly down from the bottom where that little drain nipple is. I ruled out that it was the drain screw, and I ruled out any other causes. So I said, well, I need to test this and see if my overflow tube is cracked. And it's really classically typical on these old bikes to have this little brass tube crack. So what I'm doing here is I'm pressurizing it from the bottom of the nipple itself, and then I'm holding pressure on the top to close it off and using my little pressure tester with some soapy water to verify that there is a problem as far as a crack in that. And as you can see from the air bubbles, it's positive identification or verification that there is a crack in this tube. They're usually a vertical crack. They just go up and down the seam, if you will, of that little brass tube, the way they are made originally. And over the years with vibration, heat cycles, and cool-off cycles, they just crack. And then you have, again, this occult leak that you can't figure out where it's coming from, and it turns out it's that overflow tube. You can't always fix it in the manner I'm going to show you here. Most of the time, the better option is to replace them, and I'll show you two examples of that here in a minute. But we're going to do it the quick way and see if it works first. Alright, so here's a tighter shot. You can see the air bubbles bubbling from soapy water. This crack is down toward the bottom. Sometimes they are the entire length of the tube, and you can easily see them. These were not as easy to see. Sometimes the cracks are very difficult to see, so pressure testing it is proof positive and verification that there is a crack in there, plus with the soapy water. And all you have to do is figure out where. Now these drain screws can definitely be the culprit, and on these two particular carbs that were leaking, they did have bad drain screws on the tapers there, were all crusty and kind of pitted out, so I replaced them with two better ones I had on hand, but then the pressure test verified it. Now again, the best way to solve this is really replace them, but in this case what we're going to do is we're going to solder these up with a soldering gun. We're not going to use a torch or open flame. So anytime you do this, you want to clean these up really well. I'm using some Scotch-Brite. And then I'm going to go in here with some brake clean and a clean rag and get that tube spotless as much as possible, and also flush the inside of the tube out to try to get some of the gunk that's inside that crack out, because as soon as you hit it with heat, that gunk is going to migrate out and possibly contaminate your solder joint. This particular crack is still difficult to see, so I made a mental reference, and I'm pointing to that little corner right there, which is the direction in which I saw the bubbles on that side of that corner. So I'm going to direct the soldering gun tip there, and I'm putting a little flux on here right now to get it prepped for soldering. And what I'm going to do is just come in from that back side on that corner angle with the tip of the soldering gun and give it a shot. I'm just going to use some electronic solder on this. That usually works really well on this brass, these thin brass tubes. And we'll go ahead and give it a shot, and hopefully this will work out pretty well. Now this is the second one I did. The first one was number 1, and that took 4 tries to get this to seal off. But this one, as you find, is going to take a little less, or a little easier, I should say, and it's going to go really well. So it was a good thing that this is the one I filmed, because the other one had some potty mouth going on after it failed 3 times. So this is how you do it, basically, for a quick attempt to repair it. We go in with the soldering gun and the solder, and you can put it on your soldering tip first. And then once you contact the brass, you just basically drag it up and down and try to get it into the area that you believe the crack is. And at that point, it'll pretty much smooth itself in. You don't want to go too much. You don't want to just load it up with solder. Use just enough. Just go up and down a little bit. And then once it's on there and spread out, then you stop. You don't need to go any further. And then give it a test. Give that solder, 30 seconds or so to make sure it's hardened. There's not much mass to that tube, so it's not going to stay hot very long. But what you want to do is make sure you let it cure enough or harden enough so it's not going to get distorted when you touch it, which typically happens when you have something with more mass. So now we're going to go ahead and just pressurize it and see what we got. And right now what we have is a solid repair. No leakage, no bypass, no nothing. And so that worked out well on one shot. Like I said, a number 1 carb, it took 4 tries to get it to this. because that was much worse cracked and was harder to see. So this is definitely something you can do as far as a quick repair. And I'll discuss a couple of quick notes on this, and then we'll go ahead and finish it out. A couple of quick notes on this. As far as the tubes go, if that crack migrates down into where it's pressed into the float bowl body, this is probably not going to repair because the crack is not going to get filled up with solder below that line where I'm pointing to right here. Historically, you're just going to have to take that tube out, machine it out, and replace it with something. So that is one thing to consider. Another consideration is space limitations, because sometimes that tube is very close to the float. So if you have a little blob of solder on there, it might actually hold your float up, so you have to check that. This is really only a temporary repair. The best repair is to replace it. This is one I did on, I think it was a CB750 float bowl. So you measure the existing height of the tube to make sure you have that proper, and then you can make one or purchase some tubing or whatever. These came out pretty good. I was pretty proud of these. These are from a 1977 KZ1000, and they was the first ones I actually did. I had no machine tools at that time. I just used 1/8 inch copper tubing. There was plenty of room in there, so I didn't have to worry about any float interaction or getting held up. And I made sure it was the correct height, and then just used a drill press and then pressed them in. So that worked out well, and sometimes you got to do what you got to do. I have a video on this one. I'll put a card in here in case you want to look at it, but this is from a quad or an ATV a couple of years ago where it was cracked at the bottom. I referenced that before, and what happened was I just touched it and it broke off. So it had to be drilled out. I didn't have a milling machine then, but I had the old Atlas lathe, so I was able to turn a new tube for it, and I just used the Grizzly drill press as a press to press the tube in, and that worked out real well. It was a good solid repair, so that's another option you can do. And here's a proper way to install a float. Just kidding. Now, when I got these carbs in, I initially tested them simply by putting fuel to them and then opening the drains, and I only got fuel out of 1, 2, and 3. So when I took carbs off the bike and then took the float bowls off, I noticed immediately there was something wrong with number 4. So there's your problem, lady. Somebody put the float in upside down. That's a new one on me. I've never seen this one before, but yep. So we got ourselves a successful but temporary technically repair on these float bowls. So I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, subscribe, stick around, ring the bell, and like, share, and I'll show you more stuff in the future. Thanks for watching.